George, Utah, and places just north of St. George, Utah, ready to spring. But I think we can avoid violence if there's enough people, and that's what the man was making the point. If there's enough people willing to go out there, I'm not saying you got to camp with them for a month, but supposing, you're like Peter Adams, his supervisor here. Here's a chance where Peter Adams, who was dragged through the courts for years and years, cost him, I think he said it, we were talking at a gas station one day, I think Peter Adams said it cost him $8 or $8.5 million to win because the federales, the communists in American uniforms working for the communist American government, were telling him, well, there's a red-legged frog or some kind of endangered species, so you can't farm this land anymore. Total nonsense. I mean, it was just total nonsense. Peter Adams won. Peter, hello. Peter, are you going to go out there and join the Bundys? Show that at least one supervisor from one California county cares? Because when you were under the thumb, I was probably the only person in the media offering to do a full show on your thing, and I'm the only one who went and taped your lawyer's speech down there in Buellton. Now it's maybe time to help somebody else who's under the thumb. And this is basic land and water rights, people. And if we let these people run amok over us, eventually you will have no rights left. And I know a lot of you city slickers are thinking, well, that's cowboys and ranchers, and they're used to carrying guns. And it's not, well, you don't have to carry a gun. Carry your cell phone. Carry a small digital video camera that can run 4 hours of tape. Bring it back to me. I'll run it. You know, we need to keep documenting the criminal activities of our criminal government. And when I say criminal government, I'm not joking. If you read this book yet, which you should have, but if you haven't, you should read this book, LBJ, the mastermind of the President John Fitzgerald Kennedy as us, a nation. 50 years ago, last November, the vice president in cahoots with, and I'll have Pamela hold this book near and dear to her heart and show it to you later. But J. Edgar Hoover, top CIA officials, and a low-level CIA official who later got to be president were in on the murder of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And we ought to hold them accountable. They're all dead except one. One is still alive. And that's the one guy Philip Nelson did not have the courage to name in his book. He didn't name that one. But he named J. Edgar Hoover because that was easy. He's dead. He named LBJ because he's dead. They're not in power. And if you think it was just LBJ who wanted him dead, then you don't know the whole story. But ever since then, we've had a steady stream of hardened criminals in the White House, with perhaps the exception of the peanut farmer from Georgia, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan. All the rest, including the one I half-heartedly thought was half-heartedly okay, Richard Nixon, known at the time as Tricky Dicky, all of these people are hardened criminals. They should have all been in prison a long time ago. Okay, now I want to give you this, Bundy Ranch. Did I tell you? I think I did tell you. They're having a party right now as we do the show. That's why they're not here in the studio with us. They're not Skyping with us, because they are celebrating their victory. We need to help them keep celebrating that victory, help them be on top of it, and not be outgunned. And we are in World War III right now. You've been watching too much Fox, CNN, ABC, CBS, and all the rest of these guys. You've been watching too much of that stuff. Here's a little piece. I'm not ready to bring it to you just yet. I got to find my spot here. But this is a good little piece. There's a lot of good little pieces out there. This is just one of them. Okay, let's go to this. This is put out there by Kit Daniels, I believe.
Breaking: Senator Harry REID behind BLM land grab of Bundy Ranch. The Bureau of Land Management, whose director was Senator Harry REID's former senior advisor. All right, so there's the big connection between BLM and Mr. Reid here, has purged documents from its website stating that the agency wants Nevada ranchers Cliven Bundy's cattle off the land his family has worked for over 140 years in order to make way for solar panel power stations. Yes, the Chinese involved in a multi-billion-dollar deal on this land here. Deleted BLM.gov, but reposted for posterity by the Free Republic. I guess they deserve a lot of credit for breaking this. The BLM document entitled Cattle Trespass Impacts. Hilarious. Cattle Trespass Impacts. Directly states that the Bundy cattle impacts solar development, more specifically the construction of utility solar power generation facilities on public lands. So much for your desert tortoise, eh? Bullshit. Here's a quote. The non-governmental organizations have expressed concern that the regional mitigation strategy for the Dry Lake Solar Energy Zone utilizes Gold Butte as a location for off-site mitigation for impacts from solar development, and that those restoration activities are not durable with the presence of trespass cattle. I love that term, trespass cattle. How does cattle trespass? Cattle just goes where it goes. There looks like a nice field. I'm going to go eat some grass. Right? They don't trespass. And how can you trespass on land that you've been using for so many generations? Well, that's beside the point. We've already dealt with that in length. Another BLM report entitled Regional Mitigation Strategy for Dry Lake Solar Energy Zone. This is BLM technical note 444, reveals that the Bundy's land in question is within the Dry Lake Solar Energy Zone and surrounding area, which is part of a broad U.S. Department of Energy program for solar energy development in 6 southwestern states on land managed by the BLM. So if there's any land out there that you're using for cattle and it's managed by the BLM, watch out, because they're probably going to come for you next. Another quote here, in 2012, the BLM and the U.S. Department of Energy published the final programmatic environmental impact statement, the PEIS. Sounds like piss, right? For solar energy development in 6 southwestern states. The report reads, the final solar programmatic environmental impact statement assessed the impact of utility-scale solar energy development on public lands in 6 southwestern states, including Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah. The approved Resource Management Plan amendments / Record of Decision, the ROD, for solar energy development in 6 southwestern states implemented a comprehensive solar energy program for public lands in those states and incorporated land use allocation and programmatic and CEZ specific design features into land use plans in the 6-state study area. Now, back in 2012, the New American reported that Harry REID's son, Rory REID, was the chief representative for a Chinese energy firm planning to build a $5 billion solar plant on public lands in the Loughlin, Nevada. And journalist Marcus Stern with Reuters also reported that Senator Reid was heavily involved in this deal as well. Well, go figure, right? Money fucking under the table, all around. These guys are thick as thieves in these plots. Desert tortoise, my ass. Reid and his oldest son, Rory, are both involved in an effort by Chinese energy giant ENN, this is the energy group, to build a $5 billion solar farm and panel manufacturing plant in the southern Nevada desert, he wrote. Reid has been one of the project's most prominent advocates, helping recruit the company during a 2011 trip to China and applying his political muscle on behalf of the project in Nevada. Now you can see how the BLM being controlled directly, right? Directly under the control of this senator, being used as thugs to go and clear out these ranchers. His son, a lawyer with a prominent Las Vegas firm that was representing ENN, helped it to locate a 9,000-acre desert site that is buying well below appraised value from Clark County, where Rory REID formerly chaired the county commission. Look at this. It's unbelievable. Although these reports are in plain view, the mainstream media has so far ignored all this information, of course, because they work for these same scumbags. The BLM's official reason for encircling the Bundy family with sniper teams and helicopters was to protect the endangered desert tortoise. This is the biggest farce ever, with the agency has previously been killing en masse due to budget constraints. I just heard the other day that they shut down some sort of desert tortoise farm and they had to euthanize all the tortoises. How crazy are they? They think they can push this shit through. Well, those sheep will drink it up. Here's a quote. A tortoise isn't the reason why BLM is harassing a 67-year-old rancher. They want his land, just the same as always. Journalist Dana Loesch wrote. The tortoise wasn't of concern when U.S. Senator Harry REID worked with BLM to literally change the boundaries of the tortoise's habitat to accommodate the development of his top donor, Harvey Whitmore. I mean, can you just arrest these people already for their fucking outright bullshit lies? REID is accused of using the new BLM chief as a puppet to control Nevada land, already over 84%, which is owned by the federal government, and pay back special interests, she added. The BLM has proved that they've a situational concern for the desert tortoise, as they've had no problem waiving their rules concerning wind or solar power development. Clearly, these developments have vastly affected a tortoise habitat more than a century-old quasi-homesteading grazing area. And we're talking about an area of 600,000 acres when you had 1,000 head of cattle. It's just hilarious, right? The Drudge is now reporting on this, which is...
I need you to look at this guy. Now, I'm not calling him a scumbag senior. This YouTube videographer or vlogger, he's calling him a scumbag. You need to call Harry REID. And here's the numbers to call this guy. This guy, I cannot believe the communist Chinese that own ENN and its parent corporation, I cannot believe they are not filling Harry REID's pockets with, if not a few hundred million, probably a few billion. And why should you even suspect that? I mean, why is Harry REID, with his fancy home and his fancy office, why he spends most of his time in Washington, D.C., why does he care about the Bundy Ranch, you know, a couple hundred miles north of Las Vegas, just before you cross into the Virgin River Gorge there, just south of Mesquite? Why does he so dead set on driving the last rancher who's been there for generations, that was there before the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, was even created? The ranchers there were growing melons and cattle. And the desert tortoise survived that. The desert tortoise even survived America's nuclear test in Nevada. Think about that. This desert tortoise that they tried to force them off the land, saying they're hurting the desert tortoise, in the 50s and early 60s, you have to be my age to remember this, you got to be 60 plus, they were sending school children out in St. George, Utah to stand on cliffs and watch live nuclear detonations. Yeah, they were supposed to wear sunglasses, but a lot of those kids that did that are dead now. Or they came down with breast cancer or some other kind of cancer. And when I went into an office one day in St. George, I accidentally went into the wrong office and found they had a stream of people that came in. Nursing mothers whose, as children, as little children, back in the 60s, had watched these nuclear, and they were monitoring their blood counts for all kinds of things.